Hello, and welcome back to what is this? Part 3 now.
Part 3
of the Beatles Get Back, the event, the TV
mini-series,
event, mini-series, epic, masterpiece. So quick recap of Part 2 before we talk about what we're expecting of Part 3, and then we will go away. We'll watch Part 3, but that won't matter to you. It'll be a seamless shift into our thoughts on Episode 3.
And then just anything that we haven't covered in any of the previous. That's going to be a long bit at the end there, isn't it? We're just going to go for hours.
We're going to go
it'll
for
be good. It'll be good. Just settle down, come along with us. You know, it'll be fun.
As we prattle on.
We're doing like our own version of the Get Back thing, just a sort of mundane, long form, but hopefully somewhat compelling.
Yeah, we hope so. It'll be fine. The first two have been all right.
I hope so. I mean, the first one particularly, great response.
Yeah.
So yeah, good stuff. So yeah, Part 2. What did we see in Part 2?
Okay, Part 2 was George comes back into the fold.
So yeah, we had a bit of sort of a few sad days at Twickenham, didn't we? And the flower pot conversation and that. Yeah. And then George comes back.
And presumably he's made a few demands. Gets
them over to Apple.
Yeah. So they leave Twickenham. Mm-hmm. They go to Apple.
Then they just sort of settle into it, really, don't they?
Yeah.
There's some loads of cool little micro moments that we've sort of spoken about in more detail in Part 2. You know, the material is starting to come together. We see our main man, Billy Preston, show up. I feel like George Martin is a bit more of a presence in Part 2 as well. Yeah, he gets more
involved. Part 2 is great. You start to see a lot more of the songs starting to take more of a final form, as in like they get to the end of them.
Yeah.
A lot more often.
But there was no real cliffhanger with that one, was there?
No cliffhanger at the end of 2.
Just sort of left us with the concert was in 4 days. There was a bit of sort of the general peril, but there wasn't really a specific cliffhanger with that one.
No. I will say with Part 2, interesting how much material from Abbey Road starts creeping in Part 2.
Yeah, I mean, throughout, like little bits pop in here and there, don't they? Like, I think I heard Paul do Her Majesty, that little snippet that's kind of, you know, right on the end, almost like the hidden track. She came in through the bathroom window. Polythene Pam, Mean Mr. Mustard.
Maxwell Silverhammer,
yeah, that's floating around.
Yeah.
So yeah, there's a lot of the Abbey Road material is present at that point.
Yeah. Interesting.
So
yeah, Part 2 was great. If you haven't seen our Part 2 episode, then go and watch that before you watch this.
I feel like these are to be watched in order. I mean, ideally, you know, if you haven't watched any of them, watch Part 1, then our Part 1 thing, then watch Part 2, then our Part 2. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah, well, these are sort of like the after show, I guess you'd say.
Yeah,
the giant pod, Beatles Get Back after show.
Exactly.
Essentially.
So that's Part 2 kind of summed up. What are we expecting to see in Part 3?
Well, we know the rooftop show is going to happen.
Yeah.
So that's going to be interesting to see how that's pulled off. And more, I mean, I've seen parts of the rooftop gig. I think most
bits have been floating around, haven't
fans have. But just a bit more context, a bit more detail as to how that goes down.
I mean, you know, they still seem, it says they're 4 days away, and a lot of it, they still seem pretty far off at this point. So although we know that happens, it's like, it's going to be interesting to see what happens in those 4 days to get them, you know, battle ready.
Yeah, it is very much, I mean, there's a backs against the wall element here, isn't there? And they might pull it out the bag. Well, they must do because we've seen
it. So they do something, yeah. And then you know, Let It Be did eventually come out. You know, I think they may have done some overdubs and stuff. They may have sort of done a little bit more on it after Abbey Road recording sessions, even. Like, I think there were a handful of recording sessions in 1970 actually for the Beatles at Abbey Road, but never all together. I don't think there was little, you know, sub pairs and groups doing mixes and overdubs and stuff. So we know eventually something comes out, but at this point, although we're seeing, you know, material we're starting to recognise, it's still a long way off, except for You Blue. When in Part 2, that performance of it was just amazing. But yeah, anyway, so Part 3, they just need to get their shit together, basically, don't they?
Yeah, pull their fingers out and get down to it. It must be final form time. We must see these songs take final form and shape.
Do you think we're going to come and see George Martin come in and just knock them all around, go back to the old days, reinstate that early days power dynamic and just go, right, boys, time to knuckle down, tune the instruments, no more silly voices.
Yeah, well, what is interesting about what we've seen so far is that, when George Martin is on the set or in the room, they tend to get on with it.
The standard improves a little, they're still susceptible to, it's the silly voices every time. One of them will just do one silly voice and then before you know it,
they're all doing it.
In fact, that's another thing we must have to see in part 3 because there's certain bits we've seen in trailers that we haven't seen in the other two. So, unless they're entirely separate, I presume it's included. It's going to be them singing Two of Us with two of us. That's got to come at some point, hasn't it? Yeah.
That'll be fun. Yeah, I mean, part 3 is. We're expecting this to be an action-packed one.
Yeah, it's just going to be everything else, isn't it? I'm not sure I even know the set list for what they do on the roof. I think they Don't Let Me Down. The kind of official music video for that is kind of clipped up from bits of the rooftop performance, isn't it? So
I think so.
Whether that's an actual take or not, or whether it's almost like they're doing a music video, who knows? But
who knows?
Yeah. I guess it's all gearing towards that. Maybe we should just jump in and watch it.
Yeah.
And we're back. We've just watched part 3. I'm not feeling good. I'm feeling listless and empty.
Yeah.
I've loved it, don't get me wrong.
Yeah, I've loved it. I feel kind of weirdly, I don't know if it's because they're so each episode, I can't talk. Each episode has been so long. I feel a bit emotionally drained by it. I feel a bit like I can feel it here.
Yeah.
I just feel a bit like there's relief that they did it.
Yeah.
So I don't know. It's weird because we've been a fly on the wall. It's been like watching Big Brother, Beatles.
Yeah, I think that's a very interesting comparison. It's just the kind of it's endlessly kind of mundane but compelling, and I don't know. I feel like it's an interest. It's obviously a choice, and the fact that there was initially an 18-hour cut means Peter Jackson wants us to feel the monotony of what it's actually like to make an album. Both me and you, we've got experience doing recorded music. We know that it can be an arduous process, and you're doing this stuff over and over and over again, and then eventually, you can't see the wood for the trees. And we've seen so many now over the 3 episodes, ramshackle versions of Don't Let Me Down, until they finally get it together.
Yeah.
That we're kind of emotionally invested in them getting these songs together.
Yeah. And seeing them get to the end of the song and it be like, was that the one?
And seeing them actually make it the whole way through, wasn't it?
Yeah. We're skipping forward a little bit here with what I'm about to say, but it was no, maybe not. They're peppered throughout the third part, but it's when the subtitle comes up saying this version appears on Let It Be. It's like, boys, you've done it.
It's the one.
You've done it, boys.
Yeah.
Here we go.
Exactly.
And that's they're quite powerful edits, really. There's something about you goes, oh. Yeah. It's very interesting.
What song do we see kind of abused the most? I'd say Don't Let Me Down.
Don't Let Me Down gets chucked against the wall multiple times, but I feel like Let It Be is
that's a slog.
God's sake, just get to the chorus. I feel like Paul never really you never really see him play it all the way through. And do you see him play it all the way through in this at all?
I don't think we do. Because over the final credits, I mean, look, let's just accept now that this is going to be all over the place chronologically.
Yeah.
And we've been hit with 9 or 8 hours of Beatles content. We're not going to be able to keep it straight in our heads. They were doing all that teasing stuff in the credits of like, showing a take, and then yes, something would go wrong.
Yeah.
So yeah, that was pretty abused. I don't feel like Get Back was abused. I feel like seeing the actual song Get Back develop over the course of the sessions is just amazing.
Yeah.
I mean, that's almost the through line, isn't it? Of like, it gets better each time. Whereas Don't Let Me Down, it really goes through some troughs in places, doesn't it?
Yeah.
But so yeah, you're right though, to bring it back to what you were saying. When that finally we get that little bit of yellow text saying this was included, or later included on the Let It Be album.
Yeah.
It's just like, fucking finally, take 104. You know, it's in the can.
Yeah, but then also you're like, here's the magic. This is the magical bit. This is like these songs that we've been listening to for. I mean, I'm only 29, so I've been listening to Beatles not for probably 15 years or something now.
Mm-hmm.
It's like, I finally get to see how it was done. Or you get to see I know it's weird. It's like with many albums, classic albums or whatever, you don't get to see it happen. It just exists.
No one thought to put cameras there at the time, did they?
Right.
Like,
yeah, it just, or you can see them doing some takes, but you never, or very rarely you see the one and get to see it. It come out of them.
Yeah,
and it's just like, oh shit, here it is.
I mean, literally, you see him pluck Get Back out of the sky. He's just noodling, and then it's just this minute, and then it's just he's got it. And yeah, to see literally the moment of inspiration, like
all the way through ideation, all the way through.
Yeah,
and then bam. On the roof, I think it is, isn't it? Where they get is it, or do they do one in the studio after?
They do it 3 times on the roof.
I think it's 4. I don't know. They play a lot of stuff on that roof.
I actually need to maybe look up that set list again, because there was so many duplicates, and it was because neither of us had seen it. I don't even know if that was available in full, and maybe in bootlegs and stuff. But
I've seen stuff on YouTube, but I always assumed that they had they'd dubbed the studio version over the rooftop.
No, so just had very long cables.
It sounds very good. That's why very, very well recorded.
Very long cables, and it's all Telefunken mics. I've been being a mic nerd the whole way through. I don't recognise every last one of them, but now and then I'll spot one I recognise and shout it out. And yeah, I mean, they've got stockings over them to stop the wind noise going too badly. It's as good as a recording studio. You're not going to get really much reverb up there because there's nothing to reflect off. So why not record on the roof?
Why not?
And we saw in that concert a lot of that material actually ended up being kept.
Yeah, it's perhaps what it needed was that kick up the ass. It was that the whole of London or whatever, or Savile Row at least, could hear them. And they had the pressure of the police. And it was like, what's that expression? It's time to shit or get off the pot.
Time to shit or get off the pot. Exactly. Because there's that. Oh, do you remember that really tense bit where Paul is talking to John about the deadline? And then, George Martin, I think, says like, well, Paul, you've had lots of deadlines, but you keep moving them. And he goes, I know, and that's why I'm talking to John about it, not you. Or something. And it's like, whoa.
It's like, fuck off. Yeah.
But for some reason, they did, even though, we see them the night before, and they're like, we might do it tomorrow. We don't know. George is like, I don't want to do it, but he's smiling anyway.
Yeah.
And then somehow they do, and I think it's a really interesting bit, and I love the way it's presented in the split screen. I think that works really well.
Yeah.
I think that is going to divide opinion.
It will, but it also feels a bit like an ode to the front cover of Let It Be as well, because they're in the 4 blocks on Let It Be.
Interesting. I hadn't thought that, but yeah, that's.
But there's no moment that I could see where it mirrors where there's a reference to the front cover.
It exactly.
Where they frame each one up.
Oh, that might have been a bit,
bit on the nose.
A bit Bohemian Rhapsody, you know.
But it's just great. And I guess they're at the point where Peter Jackson, he said before that if they've got if they've got multiple angles of a situation, they use an angle they've never used before. But something like the rooftop show, it would almost be a crime at this point, after this many years, to only show one angle at a time if you've got 3 or 4 angles capturing this incredible event. And I get it that they want to give you every angle.
Yeah, absolutely.
And so
it's cool, you know, because it gives you a sense of, you know, I kind of like the fact it's going down to those people on the streets, and you got those, but there's like
vox pops.
Yeah, people like going, well, I quite think they got quite a good beat, you know, I like them. And there'd be like some old man, and they'd be like, and would you let your daughter marry the Beatles? And he's like, yes, I would. I think they're rather stylish, and I like their sounds. And it's, you know, I think it's great. It really like,
and they got money.
Yeah, it fills it out as a period piece a little bit. You know? But the thing I was going to say, I really like how they've included all the in between bits, and when they all go out and look over the railing and see people, and you know, they see that there's people down there, and McCartney like catches someone's eye, and he does his one of a little McCartney thing, and you're like, shit, they're doing it, you know. Yeah. And it's like,
he was fired up.
He was on, and the thing is, I think he now, you know, he seems like he really likes performing now.
Yeah.
Because I guess, you know, the tech can support it, and he probably can tour very comfortably, and like, I think that's when he evolved into his final form of like, he always was the performer. Yeah. So it's a bit weird that they were locked away for all those years, you know. Like, I mean, John and George did do a handful of solo shows, you know, more than a handful. They did tours here and there. But Paul was really the one, like, with Wings, they were doing like student clubs and stuff, weren't they? He's the...
I don't know.
Yeah,
I assume so.
They did. That was, I believe they did like their first tour, maybe with Ram and stuff. They did.
Well, they weren't like an arena band, were they?
I mean, they eventually ended up as one. They had
some
like
massive hits.
Yeah, they eventually ended up with, you know, a big horn section and that. But I think you just see Paul just being his McCartney self, because he can see that there's people watching and digging it, and there's that feedback, and because of that, so much of that material was usable, even though they seemed to do everything, you know, 3 times. Obviously, you know, they were making a film at the time. Yeah. And so they want to get stuff from different angles. You know, we'll film Paul's close-up on this one, John's on the next. So you had to do it twice.
Yeah, and I guess it's a case of, you know, get 3 in the bag, and then you've got 3 takes to choose from as well, in terms of music, not just in terms of camera angles in aesthetics. It's like, you know, they might get the golden take, and if they've gone to the effort of building all that on the roof and making it, you know, rigging it up downstairs on the, did you say 8-track?
It's an 8-track on this point, yeah.
Then you're not going to go up there and do one of each, are you? You're going to make sure that
you got stuff, material to play with, yeah. But there was a few bits. I mean, again, I'm sure this information is out there. If I was, you know, in a Mark Lewison book or something, they're incredibly thorough. But there was some where it's like, you know, this take eventually ended up on the album, and you know, I'm thinking there must be some bits where they've like redone a vocal, or there was never a take where I thought, yeah, that's Billy Preston's piano solo on Get Back, for instance. Right. They always seemed a little bit, you know, okay, maybe it's that half of that one, or that half of that one. You know,
yeah, it wasn't.
So I don't know whether any of them are just completely the raw performance, or whether it's, you know, it's fairly common to record that, and then, you know, you might strip the lead vocal off or do some punch-ins in the studio later. I really don't know, but I'm sure that information is out there. Yeah, should we care to look?
Oh, it'll be there.
Yeah,
it'll be there. Yeah, part 3 was very, very interesting, and like you were saying at the beginning of this, you know, when you've watched a TV show. Yeah. For more than 2-3 seasons, usually. And you get so invested in the characters and the story because it's so long form. You really have time to see an arc or a character development.
You spend a lot of time with them, don't you? Yeah.
And then when it's over, it's kind of like, you're like, well, that's the end of those characters.
My friends are dead.
I kind of, once that had ended, I kind of had that, not fully that feeling, but like, have very similar feelings. Like, oh.
We definitely all well, what exactly what happened?
I just want to watch that for every album.
I'm imagine. I mean, just it's a kind of cruel twist of fate that the technology was only there by the end of their career in some ways, wasn't it? But so after it had ended, we literally just sort of sat here for about 5 minutes and didn't really say much to each other. And then you put on the 2020 remix of All Things Must Pass. And we sort of sat here just, considering life for a bit. And then, we finally switched on the camera and started recording. But we'd been in that basement with them for a month as well, hadn't we?
Definitely. And it's so weird, and maybe this is not really maybe this is not really after show chat in terms of about the show, but like they're so young, and I don't know. It almost gave me a bit of an existential crisis.
What have I done?
Well, no, not really, because I feel like I'm doing all right. but But like, it looks like it was shot yesterday. Obviously, you're acutely aware that you're watching old historical footage, but they're presented 50 years younger, aren't they?
Yeah.
Like in crisp HD, and it looks like it could have been yesterday, and they're all 80-something years old now.
It's mad.
I don't want to say the best years of their lives are gone.
Well, two of them's entire lives
two
are
of
gone.
Two of them are dead, and I don't know, it's just like...
Oh, Ringo's recent cover of Rock Around the Clock was pretty good.
I haven't even heard it. But I don't know what I'm trying to say, really. It's
I do know what you mean. It seems strange.
Nothing is permanent, and
all things must pass.
All things must pass, but it's just...
It was just... That was literally... I kind of think... I feel sort of the same thing. I don't want to put words in your mouth, so I'll say what I think, and then you can say if you agree.
Right.
It's that it's almost... they're this legendary, amazing thing, and they feel impermanent. But at the same time, we're just seeing a month of 4 people's lives, and quite a lot of it is kind of fairly ordinary.
Yeah.
And it's sort of... It's pulled the curtain back a little bit.
Yeah.
And it's strange that because of the quality of the restoration and the footage, and even the sort of, the directorial style at the time is quite... The shots are quite modern, so it's just strange seeing that and the quality of that restoration that, however old he is, 28-year-old McCartney and, 80-year-old McCartney seem to coexist in 2021 now.
Right.
And that's a bit hard to get our heads round, isn't it? Like,
yeah. But there's something, I don't know, perhaps it's just not a fear of dying, but it's just that, nothing is permanent and everything ends, and it's like what we're looking at is 4 young guys who have the world as their oyster. Every dream has come true. They're living a lifestyle that's legendary, fabled, and iconic, and I don't know. And it's just weird that here they are. They look like it was done yesterday, but two of them died. One of them died 12 years before I was born.
Yeah.
Lennon was 1980, wasn't
he? Yeah.
Yeah. 12 years before I was born. But here they are, and they look... And it's weird, though. It's like they look just like you and me in a way. Like, obviously, we don't look like Paul McCartney did.
No.
But they're so normalised.
Which is very human, isn't it?
And it's just, I don't know, it's just scrambled me a little bit.
Yeah, I think everyone who's been watching this, who's been a lifetime Beatle fan, is going to be feeling a bit odd.
I don't know how I feel about it.
I'm hoping that someone more articulate than me, maybe the guy who does I Am the Egg Pod is very articulate. I want to see what Chris Shaw, I think his name is. We'll see what he says about it. But
it is probably about 1 a.m. as well while we're doing this.
It is late. I mean, we've already got our late night voices, but I feel it's appropriate. I mean, it's an ordeal I've enjoyed, but I do use the word ordeal.
Yeah, I feel
watched.
stressed. I felt stressed watching it. Like, it's stressful.
Because it's so... For literally until the rooftop concert, except for a few pockets here and there, it doesn't even... It is literally just like a garage band, isn't it? Like...
Yeah. But I wonder. It makes me wonder now about that 18-hour cut. It makes me wonder if
what's on the cutting room floor.
It makes me wonder what scenes or passages of time are missing that bridge some of these gaps, because it looks like one calamity after another, and then all of a sudden it almost looks a bit like, oh well, they got that arrangement together fairly quick, blah blah blah. I'm wondering if there's a smooth. I mean, it's a very good way of putting it across. They've managed to get a lot of narrative.
Well, this episode, so
what they've got,
yeah.
But I'm wondering with an 18-hour cut, whether you see a more gradual process to that rooftop, whether there's a bit that we're missing, where it's like there's, actually it's not that bad. For most of the last few days,
go to sleep, have some really good breakfast that morning, and then just bring it all together. It does seem a bit perfect, but I would also say that specifically this episode had there wasn't audio and video coverage for everything. We've edited this in as fair a representation. Something like that.
I think that's at the beginning of every episode.
Is it?
So it's like, I think so. It's like a disclaimer, which basically says audio or visuals or audio may not be available for every part of this, but we have tried our best to maintain the original narrative, I guess.
Yeah.
So you may be seeing footage that may look a little bit misleading, but that's as close to a visual representation of the audio you're hearing as you can. So basically, it's their way of saying we're not trying to recreate history or falsify a narrative here. We're just trying our best to tell the story with what we've got.
I mean, I think to me it seems a very unbiased account. I think no one is really painted out to be. No one's sort of what's the word, demonized. I think everyone is just because it's so long,
and they all have unflattering moments. They all have moments where they do come across like a dickhead. Every one of them have a snarky or a sly or a slightly underhanded side, and that's been the beauty of this, is in the humanizing bit of this as well, is that everyone has a moment where you go, oh, all right, dickhead.
Yeah, it's true. Everyone does, but I wonder. So I mean, if it were an 18-hour cut, I mean, presumably, there's just going to be a lot more tuning up, plugging stuff in, talking about what they watched on telly last night, more toast, ciggies, because I can't, because of how much is in there. It just seems impossible to me that there's some major moment that they've deliberately omitted.
No, and I'm sure you're right. I'm sure we've got the most abridged, but the most thorough version that we can. I'm just wondering if that from especially part 3, from moving into Apple into the rooftop gig, I feel like those songs at the rooftop gig were incredibly tight and realised, and we didn't see all of that happen. We didn't see all of that, all of the tightening of those nuts and bolts. So I think that's there somewhere. It's there somewhere. A more
just more and more takes,
but it just becomes impenetrable. And what they want is for it's still quite niche, this, isn't it? Because it's so long.
It is niche, but
you have a risk of turning the audience off.
Yeah, but
if you've got an 18-hour cut and you hear every lick of their Get Back rehearsals from 3 days.
Yeah, and certainly I don't think they should have done an 18-hour cut from the off. But I know, and I think if anyone's watching this video, they are probably also the sort of person that would happily have it.
Yeah.
And you wouldn't necessarily watch it all in one day.
No.
But it would be nice to have.
Yeah. It would be nice to have.
I think there's a lot of people who would even take the 60-hour cut. I think there were people who would literally take all the raw footage and be delighted. I wouldn't go that far. I want it gone through, a keen editor's eye.
Yeah, there'll be someone out there who's like, I've watched camera A. I've watched all 20 hours of camera A.
Yeah.
And I watched all 20 hours. But it won't, I don't know. I mean, the 60-hour cut will be rubbish.
It would be horrible. It would be so boring. Like, I mean, we've both been in...
You would hear one of them fart, though, I guarantee it.
Well, Ringo did, didn't he?
Did he?
Yeah, did you not do it? Did you not see that?
Yeah, Ringo fart.
That was in this part. I don't know if you heard it, but he does that and you just go, just so you know, I've farted. thought I'd best say, or something. It's great stuff. Great stuff.
Oh, well, that's all right then. We got a fart. I'm happy.
I'm trying to think of any other specific moments. I mean, I can talk about this forever.
The police at the bottom of the stairs.
The police.
For ages.
Yeah, when the police show up, I remember that in the Let It Be film, all the stuff with the police looks fake as fuck because of how it's cut together. It's obviously real in this. And like, I think that the kind of main oik policeman, he really comes across badly, doesn't he?
Yeah, he comes across like a proper square.
A real loser, real stickler for the rule. We can hear it down at Compton Square. It's like, yeah, it's sick.
We've had 30 complaints within minutes.
Yeah, and he gets there and he's like, I will have to start making arrests. And it's just, I don't know,
Yeah, it's like everyone but him is aware of the gravitas of the situation. Whether they like the music or not, they all know something exciting is happening.
Oh shit! And do you remember that other one? So someone down there explained to them that they were doing it for a feature, and then this other one goes, "Can't they dub the sound later?"
Piss off, mate. You're a policeman.
Exactly. It's like, since when are you a record producer? Like, shut up.
Oh shit! I'll go speak to John and tell him that the Bobby at the bottom of the stairs has said that it's all right. You can just overdub it later in the studio.
And they're like, "Oh fuck! Why didn't we think of that?"
Where is he? Bring
Cheers,
him up.
plot. Yeah.
Mental.
But then in the end, it's sort of when they actually get up onto the roof. I believe the kids call it big dick energy. None of the Beatles cares. When Mal goes over, he sort of crawls along and he's like, shows over, blah, blah, blah. He switches off their amps. George is back over, switches them back on, and they keep on playing.
Yeah.
McCartney gives a cheeky wink to the officers and does a little like, no, And it's like, because they just know, they're like, you ain't going to do shit, mate, with the Beatles.
Right.
Like,
You got too much money.
There's 10 cameras. What are you going to do, mate?
Yeah, and let's not forget, they were at one point in the not too distant past the country's biggest economic export. So a couple of policemen coming up on the roof to tell them to turn down.
So we've got MBEs,
So, we are an industry. What are you going to do?
It's crazy.
If they went into prison, the Queen would pardon them herself personally. Because, how's the military going to be funded without the Beatles?
Yeah.
The biggest export. I don't know. It's mad, though, isn't it? That a band at some point in their life became a superpower with a commonwealth, or at least maybe some empire still at that point, became a superpower, first world countries.
In its own right.
Biggest export.
Yeah, it's mad, isn't it? That I mean, look, I lived in Liverpool for 5 years. The legacy is strong.
Yeah.
The legacy is strong. Something I think we should talk about, actually, because we've been talking a little bit about this. I don't know if this has actually even made it necessarily onto any of the podcasts we've done so far, but we've definitely been talking about it, is the amount of Abbey Road material that seems to be floating around that then appears to be... So it appears to be rejected, but then I've sort of caught myself saying that, and I'm thinking, do they basically just want to wash their hands of Let It Be? And so they sort of put the weaker material on that, and they're like, we'll let Ringo go and film the Magic Christian, and then I'm pretty sure I feel like Abbey Road is a sort of spring to late summer album. They were recording that the same year,
right?
So were they keeping back their best material? Because we've seen. I mean, George is throwing around something, which is amazing to see.
Yeah. One of their biggest songs.
Maxwell's Silver Hammer, which the versions we've seen, I can see why none of them were keen on it, but it gets a lot of shit, but I think it's actually a pretty cool song. I really like the synth, the Moog synth on it, the early Moog. Lots of parts of the medley are floating around, aren't they? Her Majesty, Bathroom Window, Polythene Pam, Mean Mr. Mustard, I Want You, She's So Heavy.
Yeah. And
Octopus Garden.
Garden came through. And we saw a little bit of Golden Slumbers.
Yeah, we did, didn't we?
A little bit of Golden Slumbers before he gets all
Yeah. So Golden Slumbers, the lyrics for that are nicked, aren't they? That's like a famous poem or something.
Oh.
Because I think he's explaining that to Mal.
Actually, I got into some poetry recently, and when I was looking at bits and pieces and reading bits, I was like, that's fucking Golden Slumbers. Like, more than once I saw that pop up, and I thought, have the Beatles now become poetry in some circles?
No, I think it's the other way around.
That would be where it's come from then.
I think the story is with that like Paul has gone back up to Liverpool and was at his dad's house, and his dad was also a piano player and who could actually read sheet music, so he had some stuff on, and we've got his inspiration from that, but made up his own melody and everything, made up his own chords around it. He literally just lifted the words and did what he thought would be good to them. But that's all I can think of off the top of my head for that. But that's a pretty sizable chunk of the album, to be fair, isn't it? It's basically then, the few John tracks come together. Here Comes the Sun. We haven't seen any of that yet, have we? Because, and then the sort of first half of the medley. Yeah. We hear them do Carry That Weight as well, don't we? At some point.
Do we?
Yeah, I feel like they're doing like a kind of like reggae version of it. You're gonna carry that weight. They haven't quite found the tempo yet or something. But
what's interesting about the fact that there's a lot of Abbey Road material in this documentary is that none of them go, oh, that's a good one, we should put... There's no discussion about them being part of that. Like, you don't hear them accepted or rejected.
No, nothing seems to be discussed, does it? They just sort of seem
happen.
Yeah.
And then it cuts to someone having a cup of tea and a cigarette and talking about, George is talking about having a solo album or something like that. Some sort of like,
it's almost like they don't know why they're working. They're just sort of working.
Yeah.
But they've sort of all forgotten what they're doing. And Paul does say that, don't they? They're kind of that. There's a few of those quite meta bits where they're talking about like, what even is this? Like, is this a TV show? Is this an album? Is this just us filming an album?
Yeah.
Or is it a documentary about a band filming an album? Or is it a TV show? What is it? And it's like, that's what I'm thinking watching this now. What is this?
Yeah, what is going on?
I'm still not sure. I still don't think I know
what it is.
Yeah.
And it's interesting as well. There's a moment, I think it's part 2, when he goes, it's Paul McCartney sat there going, I wonder what people will think of this in 50 years.
They broke up because Yoko sat on a lamp.
And it was like, I looked at you when he said that, because it was just like, if I found that moment in the footage, I'd have been like, oh my God, that's amazing.
That is some crystal ball.
Because it's 50 years later it's come out. It's just so strange how the Beatles, with the luck, with the things they say or they do, and how things slot into place sometimes, even though they don't look like they're having a lot of luck there. But it's the moment he goes, I wonder what people will think if they see this in 50 years' time.
Yeah.
And you're like, we've literally sat here watching it 50 years later, and I don't know what to think.
I just had a thought.
Yeah.
Imagine watching Paul watch Get Back. Like if you were at the premiere or in the edit suite, the first time he's seeing this stuff back for the first time.
Yeah.
What is that going to be like?
Well, I mean, because we talked about this because Linda's in it, and he's now remarried.
Oh, we did, didn't we?
Linda's died, and I wonder if he would have wanted. I mean, I would probably, if I was married, and my wife passed away, and then years later I was married again, and a documentary about a part of my life came out, and I knew there was 8 hours of footage of me with this other person. One, I'd be like, I don't know how emotional I would be watching it, given that they didn't just break up and divorce. She died, so they were presumably in love still when she died. I wouldn't know how I'd react to that, and I wouldn't necessarily want to put my current partner, wife, whatever, through the weird emotions of like,
Yeah.
But then also you wouldn't want to make them feel too awkward, would you? With like, because you don't know what Peter Jackson's seen or found or cut in. Do you know what I mean? They're playing tonsil tennis at one moment. You might want to say, "Hey, Peter, could maybe just cut that out," because the wife or
I mean, I've no doubt.
my wife won't like
no
that.
doubt that each, that obviously Paul and Ringo, and then Yoko and either Olivia or Danny Harrison will have a veto or an edit control.
Yeah, they'll have some sort of
something. I mean, I cannot imagine the amount of like boring, wrangling legal meetings.
Yeah.
That must have been going on behind the scenes just to make this happen.
Yeah.
And I also think it's an interesting decision. I was wondering if there was going to be any bits where it cuts in to like the modern day, and I think it's interesting that they didn't do that because it just speaks for itself at the time, doesn't it? And obviously we couldn't get George or John's say on anything now. George Martin's not around. A lot of them, a lot of characters in that story aren't going to be here anymore.
And it lets the viewer decide for themselves, like what we're doing here. Everything else would have just been conjecture probably, or stuff we already know. So you'd have just been hearing people's opinions about what they think was going on, what they think George Harrison was feeling or going through or thinking or whatever. It's an interesting. It's so personal, isn't it? I imagine, watching Paul, going back to what you're saying, if we watched Paul watch this, it would be, I know I was talking about the sort of the relationships aspects 50 years ago. It's quite trivial probably now.
I mean, I think as well, Paul's current wife is probably used to, it's probably not an easy thing being a former Beatles wife, and she's probably just used to it by now. Right. Do you know, there's a lot of exceptional circumstances that come with the territory.
Yeah. It's just that he's had one of the most documented lives ever. I mean, she's probably going to know everything and have seen things that most people don't want to see.
There's that footage of Paul and Linda's wedding, and they're coming out the church, and they're just being mobbed, and it's like if that that's from the off, and like. Yeah, I'm sure you know what you're signing up for.
Exactly, but what I was going to get to is that he's watching his young self. He's watching his friend Ringo, young Ringo, but he's also watching a lot of footage of George and John and George Martin and maybe some other people. Is Billy alive still, Billy Preston?
No, didn't he die a few years ago? 2006. Died in 2006. Mal Evans, not with us anymore.
So there's a lot of people in that film that are gone now, and so that's it's probably, other than just reliving this part of his life that like is probably very stressful, and frustrating and scary and whatnot. It's probably quite an emotional watch. Because, like we said, the way it's presented, he could have been shot yesterday. Must be a head fuck.
Definitely.
Head fuck.
Did you see that? Speaking of Paul McCartney head fucks, did you see that video he did? I think it was for Find My Way, but he did that McCartney 3 Imagined, which is like the kind of remix album.
Right.
So he did Find My Way with Beck remixing it or something. And
Sounds
in the video
right,
for that, there's like a deep fake version of like kind of 1964 Paul doing all this crazy dancing. And it's so trippy to see because it's all like, deep fake stuff. But
I think I saw a clip of that. We might watch that in a minute.
Might have to check that out, yeah.
But yeah, it must be very strange. Very, very strange. But then maybe he's used to it. He's had such a weird life.
He's just got, I mean, him in particular, with the whole, Paul is dead stuff.
Yeah.
And I don't know, having to be in the public eye with like two of his, have you seen that? Have you seen that interview of him the day John Lennon dies and he gets kind of hounded outside a studio and he's kind of seems a bit off and he goes like, well, It's a drag, isn't it? And like it to me, it's like that's just like really sad because he just doesn't know how to be in the public light, and he's normally his like chirpy McCartney self.
Yeah.
But he can't be that. But he doesn't want to like blub to the cameras either because like he wants to keep something back for himself. I guess
and he's probably processing it. I mean, John's killed in New York at this point. He could be thousands of miles away, and it probably doesn't feel very real.
Yeah.
Or there's probably a huge disconnect.
And they hadn't seen each other for however many years at this point.
There's a lot to process. It's not going to... The gravity of that situation is not going to have hit him in the 10 minutes or whatever.
But I dare say he probably has one of the oddest lives of anyone currently alive.
Right. And this is why sometimes, it sounds a bit sad, but sometimes I think about Ringo and Paul as being the last two Beatles.
Mm-hmm.
I think, sometimes I feel quite sad at the prospect that one of them is going to die before the other, probably. And
leave just the last one.
And the last one. And I feel a sadness, it's strange, I know it's strange, in that they are going to be quite alone after that.
Yeah.
Because all of a big portion of the greatest moments, defining moments of their lives have been four people or sort of filming each other, I guess, and are able to talk about it and remind each other and sort of hold that information. And once Ringo or Paul or whichever one goes first, that's it. All of the other angles of their life have gone.
Yeah.
But then obviously they've been surrounded by cameras, but it's different. And that's the only people. They're the only people on the planet they can relate to.
Yeah.
John and Paul and George and Ringo. They can all relate to each other in a way that no one else will be able to relate to them because of how exceptional their life has been and how inextricably connected they have been. So it's going to be obviously going to be sad when a Beatle dies, but when there's one last Beatle, that's going to feel incredibly lonely, I think.
I agree. You ever seen the Bee Gees recently when just Barry Gibb shows up on his own? It's a sad sight, man.
We're talking about Beatles dying. We should be talking about part 3. I think it's time to
wrap this up.
I'm hoping that it's probably all in the Super Deluxe for Let It Be, but I'm hoping there might be some companion CD, soundtrack, something come out that I can get my hands on from this. That would be nice. Some audio.
Yeah, I would say check out the big Let It Be thing that's just come out. That's got a lot of the Rooftop stuff on there. It's got the Glyn Johns mixes. It's got the Spectre mixes, but they're sort of a little bit modernized. It all sounds really good. And I imagine, you need to pull up Wikipedia to know where to find each thing. It's quite a mishmash, isn't it? But yeah, it's a mishmash of sessions. It's a mishmash of songs. And as such, we have approached it in a very ramshackle way. We've been all over the place chronologically. But, we've just been assaulted with 8 hours of Beatles stuff. How are we going to make sense of this without severe notes and research?
And proper sleep.
Which is not our style. So I do hope you have enjoyed this and it hasn't just been utterly aimless and rambly. It's been fun to come out of the shadows and actually be on the podcast. I'm now going to never speak on the podcast again for until maybe episode 100. I might come on as an alien CGI character or something, but
we'll see. I might try and find an excuse to get you out.
But until then, I'm actually now going to symbolically place down my microphone.
Well, thanks very much for tuning in to part 3 of the Giant Pod Beatles Get Back after show. If you haven't seen the other episodes, why have you got to the end of this one? Go and watch those as well. If you haven't yet seen Get Back, we've spoiled it all for you, but don't worry, there's still plenty of lovely bits for you to find. Go and listen to the Let It Be Super Deluxe box set as well. Those new mixes are great. Yes, like, subscribe, leave us a comment. Go check out some of our podcasts with some incredible people as well.
Yeah, do. And let us know, if you want to do any more kind of nonsense, lo-fi stuff like this, it's it's much easier than the normal podcast, isn't it? So, yeah.
Let us know.
Goodbye, and I hope you enjoyed getting back with the Beatles. I know I did.